Henry and the Elephant. Henry and Gordon were lonely when Thomas left the yard to run his branch line. They missed him very much. They had more work to do. They couldn't wait in the shed till it was time and find their coaches at the platform. Oh no, they had to get the coaches themselves, and they didn't like that. And then one day a circus came to town, and the engines soon forgot that they were tired. They all wanted to shunt the special trucks and coaches, and they were dreadfully jealous of James when the fat controller told him to pull the train when the circus went away. However, they soon forgot about the animals, as they had plenty of work to do. One morning, Henry was told to take some workmen to a tunnel which was blocked. He grumbled away and found 2 trucks to carry the workmen and their tools, and he pushed the trucks along the line and muttered to himself, "Pushing trucks, shh, 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 pushing trucks, shh, 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 pushing trucks, shh, 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 pushing trucks, shh, shh, shh." They came to the tunnel and stopped outside. They tried to look through it, but it was quite dark. No daylight shone from the other end. The workmen took their tools and went inside. Suddenly they all shouted, "Oh! Oh! Oh! Eh! Oh! Oh! Ah! Ah!" And they came running out of the tunnel. The foreman was outside the tunnel having a cup of tea, and they said to him, "Look, we went to the blockage and started to dig it away, but it grunted and moved." And the foreman said, "Go on, get out of it. That's rubbish." "No, it isn't rubbish. It's big and alive, and we're not going in there again. So there." And the foreman said, "All right then, I'll go in. I'll ride in a truck, and Henry shall push this here blockage out of the way." And Henry said, "Oh, shoo, shoo, shoo." He hated tunnels. He'd been shut up in one once, and this was worse. There was something big and alive inside the tunnel. Henry said, I don't want to go in." And Henry's driver said, "Well, neither do I, Henry, but we must. We've got to clear the line. Now, come on, Henry. There's a good lad." And Henry puffed slowly into the dark, dark tunnel. Shh, 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 shh. Oh dear, shh, shh. Oh dear, shh, shh. Oh dear, shh, shh. Oh, what's that? Henry had bumped into something enormous. Henry's driver shut off steam at once. "What is it, Henry?" "Oh, I don't know, but I can't move it. It's moving me. It's pushing me backwards. Oh, help!" And slowly out of the tunnel came first Henry, then the trucks, and last of all, pushing hard and rather cross, came a big elephant. The foreman said, "Well, I never! It's an elephant from the circus." Henry's driver put on his brakes, and a man ran to telephone for the keeper. The elephant stopped pushing and came towards them. They gave him some sandwiches and cake, so he forgot he was cross and remembered he was hungry. He drank 3 buckets of water without stopping, and was just going to drink another one when Henry let off steam. That frightened the elephant. It went whoosh and squirted the water all over Henry by mistake. Poor Henry. He didn't like that at all. The elephant's keeper came and took him away, and the workmen jumped into the trucks, laughing at their adventure, and Henry pushed them home, hissing to himself,
"An elephant pushed me, shh, shh, shh. An elephant whooshed me, shh, shh, shh. An elephant pushed me, shh, shh, shh. An elephant whooshed me, shh, 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 shh."
In the shed, he told Gordon and James about the elephant, and I'm sorry to say that instead of laughing and telling him not to be silly, they looked sad and said,
"Oh, you poor engine. Oh, you have been badly treated, haven't you?"
Tenders and turntables. The big stations at both ends of the line each have a turntable. The Fat Controller had them made so that Edward, Henry, Gordon and James can be turned round. It is dangerous for tender engines to go fast backwards. Tank engines like Thomas don't need turntables. They can go just as well backwards as forwards. But if you heard Gordon talking a short while ago, you would have thought that the Fat Controller had given him a tender just to show how important he was. He said to Thomas,
"Oh, but you don't understand, little Thomas. We tender engines have a position to keep up. It doesn't matter where you go, but we are important. And for the Fat Controller to make us shunt on dirty sidings, well, it's not the proper thing."
And Gordon puffed away in a dignified manner. Thomas chuckled. "Poor old Gordon, he is upset." And off he went with the 2 coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. Gordon took his coaches and passengers to the terminus and waited until they'd all got out, and then he shunted the coaches to another platform. He was in a bad temper.
"It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful."
And he ran backwards to the turntable. The turntable was in a windy place close to the sea. It was only just big enough for Gordon, and if he was not on it just right, he put it out of balance and made it difficult to turn. But today Gordon was in a bad temper, and the wind was blowing fiercely. Gordon's driver tried to make him stop in the right place, but Gordon wasn't trying. He would not stop in the right place. At last, Gordon's driver said, Oh, I give up. All right then, Gordon. We can't turn you like this because your tender upsets the balance. Now, if you were a nice tank engine, you'd be all right. But you're not. You're a tender engine, and we can't turn you around, so you'll have to pull the next train backwards. So there. When Gordon came to the platform, some little boys shouted out, "Hey, look! Come quick! Here's a new tank engine!" "It isn't, silly. It's only Gordon, back to front." "Oh, so it is. What a swizz." And Gordon said, "Oh," and he puffed off to the junction. Thomas was waiting at the junction. "Oh, hello, Gordon. Playing at tank engines then? Sensible engine. Take my advice. Scrap that tender of yours and have a nice banker like mine, hmm?" And Gordon said, "Oh." Then James came along on his way to the turntable. "Oh, hello, Gordon. Got stuck on the turntable then, are you?"
You be careful, James. Otherwise you might get stuck too."
No, I won't get stuck. I'm not as fat as you are. Now you just watch me." And James went along to the turntable and stopped on just the right place to balance the table. It could swing easily. The fireman turned the handle and James turned, much too easily. The wind caught him and puffed him round and round like a top. He couldn't stop. He was spinning round and round when Gordon came along.
Well, James. What are you doing? Playing roundabouts, hmm?"
At last, the wind died down, and James stopped turning and rolled off the table to the engine shed, feeling very, very giddy. That night, the three engines had an indignation meeting. Gordon did most of the talking, though.
"It's shameful to treat tender engines like this. It really is. Henry gets drenched by elephants, James spins round like a top, and I have to go backwards, and everyone laughs at us. Not only that, the fat controller makes a shunt in dirty sidings. It's dreadful. It's dreadful. Now listen, we will act tomorrow. The fat controller will look silly. Now this is what we'll do. In the morning, when the driver and the fireman come, Trouble in the shed. The fat controller sat in his office and listened. The fat controller frowned and said, "Oh, what a nuisance passengers are. How can I possibly work with all this noise? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear." "Yes, what is it?" It was the station master, looking very worried. "There's trouble in the shed, sir. Henry is sulking. There is no train, and the passengers are saying that this is a bad railway." "Indeed, really? We cannot allow that. Now, will you quieten the passengers, please, and I will go and speak to Henry." The fat controller found Henry, Gordon, and James looking sulky. "Now, come along, Henry. It's time your train was ready." But Henry wouldn't answer. It was Gordon who said, Henry's not going, so there, and neither are James or I. We won't shunt like common tank engines. We're important tender engines, if you don't mind. You fetch our coaches for us, and we'll pull them. But we won't shunt. Tender engines don't shunt. So there."
And all three engines let off steam in a cheeky way. Psh, 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 psh. And the fat controller said, "Oh, indeed. Engines on my railway do as they're told. I'll go and find Edward." Edward was shunting. "I say, Edward, leave those tracks, will you please? I want you to push coaches for me in the yard." "Oh, thank you, sir. That will be a nice change." "That's a good engine. Off you go then." So Edward found coaches for the three engines, and that day the trains ran as usual. But when the Fat Controller came next morning, Edward looked unhappy. Gordon came past, clanking and hissing very rudely.
Why, bless me, what a noise!
I know. They all hiss at me, sir. They say tender engines don't shunt. And last night they said I had black wheels. I haven't. Have I, sir?
No, Edward, of course you haven't. You've got nice blue ones, and I'm proud of you. Tender engines do shunt, but all the same, you'll be happier in your own yard. We need a tank engine here.
And the Fat Controller went to an engine workshop and saw all sorts of tank engines. At last, he saw a smart little green engine.
Yes, I think so. That's the one. I say there, if I choose you, will you work hard?
Oh, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's a good engine. I'll call you, Percy. Yes, Percy. Do you like that, Percy?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. So the Fat Controller drove Percy back to the yard and introduced him to Edward. Percy soon learned what he had to do, and they had a happy afternoon. And then Henry came by, hissing as usual. But Percy just went. That really frightened Henry. He jumped and ran away. Edward laughed and said, "Oh, how beautifully you whooshed him, Percy. I can't make a noise like that." "Oh, that's nothing. You should hear them in the workshops. You have to make a noise like that to be heard." Next morning, Thomas arrived. "Hello, Edward." "Oh, hello, Thomas." "The Fat Controller sent for me. I expect he wants help." "Oh, he does indeed, Thomas. Here he comes now."
Well done, Thomas. You have been quick. Now listen, Henry, Gordon and James are sulking. They say they won't shunt like common tank engines, so I've shut them up. And I want you both to run the line.
"Common tank engines, indeed. We'll show them."
Well done, Thomas. And Percy here will help too, won't you, Percy?
"Oh, sir. Yes, sir, please, sir." Edward and Thomas pulled the trains. They started at opposite ends and whistled to each other as they passed. There were fewer trains, but the passengers didn't mind. They knew the three other engines were having a lesson. Henry, Gordon and James stayed shut in the shed and were cold, lonely and miserable. They wished now they hadn't been so silly. Percy runs away. Henry, Gordon and James were shut up for several days. At last, the Fat Controller opened the shed.
Ah, now then, I hope you're sorry and understand you're not so important after all. Thomas, Edward and Percy have worked the line very nicely. Now they need a change, and I will let you out if you promise to be good. Now, will you?
Yes, sir. We will.
Yes, sir, we will.
Yes, sir. We will. That's right. But please remember, this no shunting nonsense must stop.
And the Fat Controller told Edward, Thomas and Percy that they could go and play on the branch line for a few days. They ran off happily and found Annie and Clarabel at the junction. The two coaches were so pleased to see Thomas again, and he took them out for a run at once. Edward and Percy played with the trucks and pushed them into their proper sidings. The trucks made a terrible fuss. They went, oh, 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 stop, 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 stop. But the two engines laughed. And went on shunting till the trucks were tidily arranged. Next, Edward took some empty trucks to the quarry, and Percy was left alone. Percy didn't mind that a bit. He liked watching trains and being cheeky to the engines. He would make noises at them as they went by. Gordon, Henry and James got very cross. After a while, he took some trucks over the main line to another siding. When they were tidy, he ran onto the main line again and waited for the signalman to set the points so that he could cross back to the yard. Edward had warned Percy,
Look, be careful, Percy, on the main line. Whistle to tell the signalman that you're there.
But Percy didn't remember to whistle, and the signalman was so busy he forgot Percy. Bells rang in the signal box. The man answered, saying the line was clear, and set the signals for the next train. Percy waited and waited. The points were still against him. He looked along the main line and saw something that made him go, for rushing straight towards him was Gordon with the express. Gordon went, his driver shut off steam and applied the brakes. Percy's driver turned on full steam. Back, Percy, back! But Percy's wheels wouldn't turn quickly. Gordon was coming so fast that it seemed he couldn't stop. Percy just shut his eyes and waited for the crash. His driver and fireman jumped out. Gordon yelled,
Oh, oh, get out of my way, get out of my way, oh!
Percy opened his eyes. Gordon had stopped with Percy's buffers a few inches from his own. Percy was very, very frightened. He began to move backwards.
I won't stay here, I'll run away. I won't stay here, I'll run away. I won't stay here, I'll run away.
He was soon clear of the station and running as fast as he could. He whistled through Edward's station, and he ran right up Gordon's Hill without stopping. He was getting tired and wanted to stop, but he couldn't. He had no driver to shut off steam and to apply the brakes.
Oh dear, I shall have to run till my wheels wear out. I want to stop. I want to stop. I want to stop.
Just then he passed another signal box, and the signalman called out, I know just what you want, little Percy. He set the points, and Percy puffed wearily onto a nice empty siding, and at the end of the siding was a big bank of earth. Percy was too tired now to care where he went.
I want to stop. I want to stop. Oh, I have stopped.
Yes, the big bank of earth had stopped Percy. His bunker was buried in it. The workmen came to dig him out. "Never mind, Percy. You'll feel better after a drink." Presently, Gordon arrived.
Oh, well done, Percy. You know, you started so quickly that you stopped a nasty accident.
Oh, I'm sorry I was cheeky, Gordon. You were clever to stop.
Percy now works in the yard and finds coaches for the trains. He is still cheeky. He's that sort of engine. But he's always most careful when he goes on the main line.